And you earn balance through like really self-evaluating and stop letting your mind just trick you. The mind just plays so many games with you. And that's what we're trying to teach people, how to take control of it.
Go off, baby.
I'm passionate about it, man.
Just Roger telling everybody, stop being a bleep, 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 bleep. Let's go. Just do it. Create it.
Hello and welcome back to the Net Gains podcast, the #1 mental toughness podcast on Spotify and YouTube.
Number one.
For people in our personal network.
Yeah, there you go. Good caveat there.
I'm one of your hosts, Roger Parent. I'm an ex-CEO, former pro athlete, and father of 3.
And I'm Frank Field, your other co-host. I compete on the AVP Beach Volleyball Tour while working for one of Roger's companies.
Mindset is everything. It shapes how you see the world around you, your wins, your failures, and your progress towards your goals. Our goal here is to give you simple, digestible tips on how highly successful people train their minds.
Be sure to like, subscribe, follow the podcast every week for more episodes and more practical tips on how you can achieve an elite mindset and accomplish some really cool things. Or don't. And why is that, Roger?
Because we love adversity, Frank.
We love adversity.
We love it.
We love adversity. All right, today's episode, we're talking about life balance, competing priorities, how to balance multiple goals in life. So in this podcast, we're going to take you through what balance is, a definition, what that kind of looks like in terms of a day-to-day and a month-to-month life, what life balance looks like. And then finally, we'll take you through some Prostrats on when you do want to achieve better life balance, achieve multiple goals across areas of life. We're going to show you some Prostrats on how to achieve that in a more efficient way.
Awesome. Let's jump right into it then.
Yeah. So before we jump into it, we had a book we wanted to talk about. We're kind of doing something a little different today. Instead of a newsworthy legend, we're talking about an inspiring person. And in this case, it was someone who inspired me. And it was a book that I had read in college called The Goal by Eli Goldratt. So this is in my my business management classes. Maybe someone out there has read this too. Super cool book. Basically, it's a case study on operations management, focusing on the theory of constraints, bottlenecks, and how to alleviate them. And long story short, basically, a bottleneck is when you have all these machines contributing to an end result. The slowest machine slows down the entire process, and you call that a bottleneck because you can only go as fast as your slowest machine that is bottlenecking the whole process. So the book itself is kind of a guy who moves back to his hometown. He has a manufacturing plant that he's working in, and his job is to solve these bottlenecks that are slowing down the process of this whole manufacturing plant. And it kind of goes through, his marriage is kind of in trouble too, and he realizes that this manufacturing plant and his marriage have very similar things going wrong in them, and that there's a bottleneck that he needs to solve to get to the end goal. There's a really cool quote from this book. And I'll read that now. Every action that brings a company closer to its goal is productive. Every action that does not bring a company closer to its goal is not productive. But the question is, what is the goal? So really in the course of the book, he's better defining what the goal of the company is, eliminating the goals that didn't make sense, and then alleviating the bottlenecks that helped him get to that goal.
I think operations in general is like such a cool skill and a very difficult one because it requires a whole understanding of almost like every department, right? Because it's like when you think of how a process functions, remember building like the client onboarding process at Digital Position, and it was like you need to understand everything to build that process, like how our contracts work, the legal side, communication side, how we provide the service, what our account builds are going to look like, how to assign account leads, our intro calls and communication. It's like it filters through everything. And what work do we want to do up front during onboarding versus afterward? And it's just like one process. And it took months to just like clear that and figure it out and then install the whole process into Monday.com, which is the task management software that we use. And then have an accountability mechanism to ensure that every employee was following the same process. Like It's so hard to build good processes. But what I'm really interested in is like, I'm trying to understand the overlap between like operations, process, and marriage.
Well, let me really quick just take on the last thing you just said, because it's a really good example of it, right? Where we had this onboarding process that was super inefficient. It burdened every account lead. It made their lives miserable for 3 weeks, and it was not efficient, right? So when you went through this process, you realized that the bottleneck was that these leads had to do all this work themselves while managing their book, and they were slowing down their own process, right? So we hired a dedicated onboarding specialist who takes all that stuff away. And that was clearly the bottleneck elimination, was bringing this person in who does this thing. And it cleared the way for everybody else to speed up. But you wouldn't really have figured that out unless you had the goal first, right? And the goal in this process was onboard accounts faster and onboard them more efficiently, right?
Yeah, and I think we just listened to the feedback of account leads saying, every time I get a new account, I just like can't do anything because it's so much work to figure this out, right? And we realized that it was limiting our ability to take on new accounts faster or take on new accounts in general. So we had to keep slowing down our ability to grow the company because of this process. Had nothing to do with sales. We had to stop sales because of this process. It was always slowing people down. So now that we've cleared that, we can onboard 5 accounts at a time. And our account leads are able to kind of efficiently handle that because we have those dedicated roles for sure. So I guess operations in general is just about doing everything more efficiently so you have time to focus on other things.
Yeah, to answer your other question, I don't remember what the marriage intertwinement was in the book. I mean, I read this, 8 years ago in college. But essentially, they talk about the Socratic method a lot in the book too, which is like asking questions to understand what the actual problem is. So I think he started using the Socratic method in his marriage, and then they identified what the bottleneck was, and whatever, they solved it.
I mean, even just thinking process-wise, it's like I try to do like one thing for the wife every month that's like sort of unexpected, or every, couple weeks to a month. It's like I want to do something like it's just a surprise date night or bringing home some flowers or a massage or whatever. It's just like try to do something. It's like there's technically a process behind that where it's like every month I'm like got to make sure I have my thing planned, right? But then it improves my marriage through process. So I can sort of see how it's used, but I don't like document it as much. Like it's not like what you would think a traditional process of like documentation and training and stuff like that.
Well, you know what I think, Roger? I think you have to read The Goal by Eli Goldratt, and then you can understand how to document your marriage, or I don't even know how they did it. I forget, but
That I will not do, to be clear.
Yeah.
All right. Hot take. I don't think you need to read books past the age of like 20.
That's a crazy take. It's a crazy take. I don't even want to get into it because this is going to turn into like an argument for 20 minutes. But like, let's just think.
No, we're getting into it.
Let's just think about in simplest terms. If you just read a book before bed, you'll sleep better.
Or if you just turn off your devices and chill out, you would also close your blinds, you'll sleep better.
Okay, yeah, but there's also like scientific data that says if you just read actual, and even like Kindles don't have the same effect. If you're just looking at a device, if you read paper before bed, your mind slows down and goes to sleep.
Does the same impact happen from meditating? Why can't you just meditate?
Yeah, I guess you could meditate, but don't you want to read an entertaining book? It's like it's reading a movie.
So I destroyed that argument.
It's just, you're reading a movie.
What else you got? No, my thing is that like I think information is so much more efficiently digested through other means than reading a long form book. And the vast majority of books that people read don't really provide actual value. It's not like they're learning much. It's like horror fiction. It's like does a Harry Potter book really provide value in your life, or is it just like because you decompress that way?
So you'll decompress watching Netflix or whatever, but you won't read a book?
No, I decompress primarily playing video games, which then
that's great for your brain.
You improves my hand-eye coordination.
Oh yeah, okay.
I do think it's really important that at a young age that you read like I read to my kids every night. I literally yawn the whole time trying to get through these books, but I do read to the kids and believe you need to acquire the skill of reading, right? But at a certain point, it's like I could watching like even like YouTube videos, even just not like a YouTube video on how to get better at shooting pool in my basement gets me so much further and so much more knowledge than reading the giant book that the previous homeowners left in my basement on like pool tips. Like they left this like big book of just like how to get better at pool. And it's like 1,000 pages long. And I'm like, or I could just watch a YouTube video and digest that in 3 minutes, like the top 5 tips, and then work on it and film myself and get better. And the amount of time it would take me to read that book, I could be a significantly better pool player.
So you just think that you're not against books, you're against books that are self-help in nature.
I do think you can use books as a decompression. Like some people, like everybody needs to just sort of decompress and have a thing like, yeah, video games for me are mindless. It shuts out the noise and I get to compete and have like a good time and like shut my mind off for a little while. You know, or meditation or whatever. So everybody has like different ways to decompress. And I think it's totally fine as a decompression thing, but as a way to acquire knowledge, I think it's like the most inefficient way.
Yeah, that's fair.
To acquire knowledge.
Yeah.
Like people that read tons and tons of books, I don't think like are acquiring nearly as much knowledge as someone who's just honestly like scrolling their phone and digesting tons of information.
What about if you consider it from an exposure therapy perspective? So if you read one book on, we'll just keep the pool example. Maybe that's not even the best example, but if you read a pool book for 3 weeks, you're exposing yourself to pool over and over and over and over again for 3 weeks and getting a little bit better every time you read. If you just watch one pool video for 2 minutes, exposure therapy would say you'd get better over the long term by exposing yourself more often to that thing.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's just where I'm unique. Like anything that I'm interested in, I obsess over it for a period of time. So it's like I wanted to get better at pool, so I was watching pool videos, like searching pool videos in bed at night, and then like applying those to when I was shooting pool. Or I want to get better at pickleball right now, so I'm watching tons and tons of videos. Like just what I'm scrolling on social media is all related to pickleball, and because I'm engaging with so many pickleball videos, I'm getting more and more surfaced of pickleball videos recently. So I think that like I am getting video exposure, but maybe I'm unique in that aspect where it's not just one thing.
No, I think that's
I'm
probably
actually
true.
Pursuing what I'm interested in.
But that'll go back to the other piece too. Like now by watching videos in bed, you're affecting maybe your sleep or your, there's like all sorts of studies that show like screen time before bed is hurting your sleep and hurting your whatever mental efficiency the next day. And
yeah, so what I will try to do is I will try to like, I will watch videos until like whatever, a half hour before I go to bed. And then I turn on an audio podcast, which maybe to you is the equivalent of reading a book, just because it just helps me go to sleep. I'll put on a sleep timer, close my eyes and listen to a podcast for 30 minutes, but it's typically a podcast around like one I'm listening to right now is 4.0 to pro in pickleball. It's like, so I'm literally listening to how to get better at pickleball when I'm there. But I just think that like, even if you read one whole book, how do you even know that that's not biased in and of itself? Or, I mean, typically books have a better reputation than online content, but I can just be exposed to like such a wide variety of things faster.
Let me tell you my number one pro tip for reading books for anybody at home. The tip is take the 4 to 5 minutes that you're on the toilet going number 2. We all go number 2, all right? Don't flame me in the comments, and read a book instead of being on your phone. And I just find that I go through the rest of my day much easier when I don't spend that 4 minutes on my phone and I'll read a book instead on the toilet. How about that, Roger?
I would just fall asleep on the toilet. It's so boring.
That's a sign of weak bowels, if you ask me.
They're just too boring, man. I don't know. I disagree.
My toilet time is
use your phone
intense.
on the toilet.
I'll just say that.
Use the phone on the toilet and search videos that help you improve things.
Okay.
There you go.
Eli Goldrat, everybody. The goal.
All right,
By the
let's
way,
get into balance.
Time Magazine 2011 listed it as one of the 25 most influential business management books. So there you go.
Nice.
All right. Balance.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Who needs it?
50 minutes into this podcast, now we're getting to balance.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Who cares?
So balance is kind of a complicated subject. There's a lot of ways to define it. So, it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So what we wanted to start out with was just the Oxford Dictionary definition of balance, and then we'll work through from there to what we see balance as. So two definitions from Oxford Dictionary. The first one, balance is an even distribution of weight, enabling someone or something to remain upright and steady. The second definition was a condition in which different elements are equal or in their correct proportions. I think proportions is kind of an interesting way to look at this too. But I wanted to look at a second definition too, which is balancing, like the act of balancing something. And that's slightly different. It's not always equal distribution, but the result is that everything stays afloat and steady.
Yeah, I think I want to just boil it down to even simpler terms, which is just what we're really talking about here is how to balance having multiple goals in life, in different areas of life, or work-life balance as well, which is, I think I fell asleep during your definition readings there. So we're just trying to help people learn how to balance their goals, personal life, work, and even athletics, or have work-life balance, because it's such a big topic for a lot of people, or a big focus for a lot of people. But I don't think that people very well define what this means. So yeah, maybe you want to talk about what balance is not before I get into the camps?
Yeah. And I think in a lot of when people talk about life balance or work-life balance, a lot of people think of it in these terms of, I just want to do what I want to do, basically. And they'll subjugate work or slack off in favor of doing things that they just want to do, or they prefer to do. I don't love this definition of balance, because it's really just kind of slacking off in general and not doing high-performing things. For this podcast, we're trying to teach you how to have it all. And I think that it's kind of a myth to say that you can't have it all. So what we want to teach you how to do today is manage all these different areas of life, all these goals that you have, and achieve all of them simultaneously.
Yeah, and I think, what I've seen is that people fall into, typically, on average, one of three camps. The first camp is people are like super obsessive, which is, I've had that issue and continue to have that issue of being like super obsessive over goals. And you're just like, you have a very hard time decompressing, living in the moment, because you're always trying to think 3 steps ahead, and you're just obsessive over accomplishing the next thing. The second one is a lot of people aren't busy. They aren't really working that hard, and they're stuck in sort of a victim mentality of complaining about their lives and whatever, when the real issue is they're just like maybe unhappy in the work that they're doing, not that their work is too stressful or being overloaded. And I see that maybe as like one of the most common buckets. And then the third bucket I see is when people are really truly balanced, and when they actually seem to have goals they're going after, but they are still able to have a good time, still able to live in the moment, and are more focused. And that's what we're trying to get everyone into, is this like third group of balance. It doesn't mean that it's permanently balanced. It means that you're generally happy, right? I think like you want to be balanced. Balance drives a lot of like just happiness in people. So we're trying to find what balance looks like to me might not be the same balance of what it looks like for you.
Totally.
Right.
Totally. And that's kind of what we wanted to display as well, as what balance looks like in the real world, right? Because as much as we love to have goals in our personal life and goals in our relationships and goals in our sport and then goals in work and do them all at the same time, that's not really realistic, and that's not really how it looks. There's really like a shifting kind of wave that always goes through in cycles, for me personally, during volleyball season, with work responsibilities, I'm not going to deep dive into childhood trauma, for example, and try to, improve who I am as a person. There's just no time for it. There's no mental bandwidth for it. You can't really do that. But you know, you can still keep the lights on in those areas, and that's kind of where the balance comes from. So you can do that through journaling, meditation, planning, whatever that may be, to keep kind of working on yourself on the side, but you're focusing on these two really important goals, which is your sport and work, right? In a slow time at work, you can transition that to make bigger moves on your relationship. For example, taking a vacation to connect again, or you know, like going hard in the gym, building strength. So your life naturally goes through waves through the seasons, just like the seasons do, you know. But the key is to have a rising tide lift all boats. You're working on major goals in a couple areas, keeping the lights on in others. Then as your life shifts again, you can balance some major goals in other areas, and then focus on others in a lesser extent too. But again, the key is we're not just obsessing on one thing, or being whiny and focusing on nothing. The key is to have balance, and you have these goals in mind, and you're trying to grow them all.
Yeah, I've always felt like I have three pillars in life. It's my family, my career or financials, and then it's sports or hobbies. And I've always like ranked them in that order, where it's like my family always comes first. So my family goals always most important. And then I have my career and financials, which provides the stability for my family. And then I have my hobbies or sports that I play. And then, but at any varying time, I might have more or less focus on any one of those buckets, which keeps an overall balance, you know, where like I might be pursuing a sport really hard, or I might be really working hard on my marriage, you know, or I might be really trying to really overcome a hump at work, you know. And so that I think that like the balance isn't about having balance in all three, but about having overall balance in life, with an understanding that sometimes you're going to have to grind, or most times you're going to have to grind in one of those or two of those areas, right? So you're always sort of working hard in certain areas based on, you know, just the way life ebbs and flows.
Yeah, totally. And I think in both of those definitions, we're kind of talking about this theory of balancing major goals in multiple areas of life. Or I like the way you phrase that too, like multiple pillars of life. You have your top three, you're balancing those goals in those pillars and working on them. But you know, you're someone who you are CEO, father of three, husband, aspiring pro athlete. How do you, in the simplest terms of just balance in life and balancing family and balancing work, what does work-life balance look like for you?
That's a great question. I think for me, like I have these aggressive goals in all three of those pillars. And in order to have balance, I would say that I've had to almost earn my balance. Like, how much are you willing to give up to create the life that you sort of envision for yourself? And the life that I envisioned for myself was very, very high in terms of what I wanted to accomplish at a high level of athletics, the family I wanted to create, an environment, parenting for my kids, and then how they wanted them to grow up. And then my goals in career were obviously very high in what I wanted to accomplish. So I think that for me, it's always about just ensuring that I've got time commitment to everything, and just like outlining what I'm trying to accomplish in each, and then and we'll get into scheduling, but for me, scheduling and when I get into that is probably the most important, just to ensure I have enough time for each. And I am willing to give up anything towards the pursuit of goals. So it's like, if I just have to like throw my phone in the garbage for a week or whatever, if that's what it takes, and not respond to a bunch of people. Like, I have friends that make fun of me all the time for not responding to texts, but it's because it's sort of like my ability to sacrifice a lot of those types of things, sadly, sometimes, for the emphasis on other things that has, I think, given me balance. But it's largely, I think, my biggest strength is just prioritizing.
Yeah, I think what you're describing is choices, right? And while we'd love to say we can have it all, and I like to think you can have it all, in the end, there are kind of choices, right? For you personally, you have chosen not to go through this route of, I guess, like partying, for lack of a better word. You know, you don't drink, you don't really go out and do things. Mm-hmm. So if that is an option in life, you just don't take that choice. and instead you choose to do whatever, work or sports or family. So that almost goes back to the episode 2 about the art of not giving an F, right? It's choosing what you do want to give an F about, and then subjugating everything else except for those things you really do care about.
Yeah, and I think it's almost like funny that like there's certain people that like sort of feel like I never respond or whatever, and then there's other people that are like, you're the most responsive guy ever, right? And it's not that I'm like don't want a relationship with these people. It's just that, like, for example, digital position, right? If someone asks me a question about, like, we need to make a big decision on this client and we got to land this client, and it's going to be 20 grand a month of business. It's a big moves happening. Like, I'm immediately responsive to that. But if someone's asking me, typically every Slack message that Frank sends me is very low priority. So it's not that you're not an important person or I don't care about my relationship with you. It's just like the message that you're sending me about this person's PPC account that pays us $1,000 a month is just not as important.
Some of those are like $6,000 a month.
Yeah, you do manage some really good accounts.
It's funny. I figured out how to get.
It's not personal.
I figured out how to get Roger to respond now. It has to be nothing related to the actual business. It has to be either like volleyball related or I don't know. Like, I can't even like talk smack to you anymore and get you to respond. It's very limited things I can actually get you to respond to me now. Maybe just the podcast. That's it.
Yeah, you mentioned. Yeah, the podcast. I've been responding about the podcast, but yeah, because I mean I'm having fun doing it too. But and was like, if we don't record like on time, it just doesn't get out, right? Like, so it inherently has priority, because it's like if I don't answer him, we will not record and it will not go out on Thursday.
Yeah. Although I will say that last week you got super busy with other stuff, and I was like sending you outlines. You're like, K, or sounds good, or okay. I'm like, all right, dude, like, you can give me a little more effort there, you know?
Yeah. I know. There's something to be said about just talking about subjects that we are very fluent in anyway, right? And just having a good time with it and not over preparing. But yeah, you've been definitely putting the podcast on your back the last couple of weeks, and I appreciate it.
I'll continue to do so, Poppy. I got you.
All right.
And by the way, for everyone listening,
you're
seeing a perfect example of Roger just taking off on everybody's coattails again. I make the outlines, and then Roger gives these long-winded, beautiful responses, and there you go. And he's the champion of the podcast.
Oh my gosh, dude. Yeah. I would be completely lost without an outline. My brain wouldn't allow a non-outlined podcast. So if I'm not organized, I just am frantically frustrated. Yeah. So,
well, there you go. So speaking of outline, so we've kind of talked about what balance looks like in real life, kind of the definition of it. But we want to give you pro strats on this podcast. That's what we're here to do. We want to give you actionable things that you can do. So we put together a list of 6 things. So as you're trying to balance goals in 2 major areas of life, 3 major areas of life, whatever that may be, there's steps, specific actionable steps you can take to be more efficient in doing so. So you have the first one, Roger. So take it off.
Yeah, the first one is self-awareness. I think that's just important in everything. We were talking about ego and goals and all these other topics. Like, self-awareness is huge. And so the first thing you want to do is just like, if you're feeling like you're overburdened or over bandwidth or whatever, overly stressed, I think it's important to get an accounting of where you're at. So the first thing I'll tell people to do is like, just write down everything that you've done in the last like couple days, right? So as it happens, or should I say for the next couple days, as things happen, write them down. I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this, and I did this. Then you have a body of work to look at and self-evaluate. And on top of that, I would also encourage almost everybody to look at their phone and see how much social media time they are spending. Because when most people say they don't have time, I would argue 90% of the people that say they don't have time, I could go on their phone and show multiple hours a day of social media usage. And it's just, you're just not willing to give that up to be more efficient or whatever, or do more things. So I think just becoming more self-aware of what you're spending your time on exactly, writing it down takes the mental bias that happens to you. Like we all think we're better than we all are. We all think we're more valuable than we are. We all have an ego. Everybody has an ego about their own selves because it's just the way we're wired. We're human. So I think you need to start getting some objective data points on yourself of what are you spending your time doing, so that you can even start to go into these next 5 of actually changing it.
I think the number one call out there is that screen time piece on your phone. Like that is, I mean, hours of time per day. And I'm guilty of it too. I put these like the time limits on my social media. So it's usually like 15 minutes combined for Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, I think. And then I have another like,
Yeah, you get the little message that pops up and says like you have 5 minutes remaining. It just reminds you like, oh wow, I've been using this for 40 minutes a week.
So those are super, super valuable. But even so, you'll find yourself like, I'll just give myself another 15 minutes. And then that adds up over the week and over the days.
Yep, totally.
Yeah, so that's a huge one. The one that I had was an accountability partner. So as you start tackling really aggressive goals in multiple areas, your time is going to get limited. It's just a fact. It's going to, right? So by adding in an accountability partner who can help you do these things, that is a way to kind of reduce the bandwidth you need to put in on that thing. So for example, if I'm training to compete in my sport, I have a partner that I'm training with multiple times a week. I can lean on them to help plan practices, to give me feedback. So I have to do less self-evaluation. There's multiple ways this person can step in and alleviate the burden on me that I'm taking when trying to achieve these goals.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think I've always found like even in the gym, if I have somebody, even with volleyball, when you and I qualified for the Pro Tour, it was just having you and I just consistently pick each other up or send each other a message, a motivating message, whatever, training with somebody. Man, it's so helpful to have that.
And there was a lot going on in 2022. So it was really nice too to have like, we'd be planning our practice for a Tuesday and you're like, well, normally I'd be planning the practice and what we have to work on and we're going to do these drills. It was really nice to have you there to be like, well, no, we need to work on this piece of our game. Like the other thing is not as important right now. Let's work on for us, it was like these deep float serves over our shoulder. We really need to work on. So we would plan practices around that for a week and then fix it. And then, inevitably it'll change to something else the following week, but it was super valuable to have somebody else with a different perspective that could take that burden off.
Yeah. And it just like, this is why, we brought it up before that I have like partners in everything that I'm doing, including this podcast, is because I just find it like incredibly helpful to have someone to talk to about it. It's so isolating when you're trying to do something just totally on your own. So even in pickleball recently, I got into like a crew of decently high level people and I've been like training with them. And you can just tell like most of the people are just like sort of there to have a good time. They just happen to play a lot, so they are decent. And then there's this one guy and he's setting up a camera every time we play and he's filming himself. So I like immediately reached out to him like, dude, you want to train? And he's like, oh yeah, I'm obsessed. Like I want to, let's put together like a spreadsheet of our skills and rate ourselves. And I'm like, that's what I want. Like I just surround yourself with someone else who is willing to sort of do what you were looking for, have that accountability partner. And then he's messaging me as well. Like, hey, you want to train Thursday? I'm like, sure. Like, so now I'm training Thursday. So it's just good to have that.
The next one's big too. This is one that I think you are the expert at this one. So I think everybody in their life could use a piece of this. So go ahead.
Well, I think it's at the possibility of sounding out of touch. It does require financial, like some measure of financials, right? So the third one is paying someone or upgrading your circle to save time. And I've found that consistently, if you can afford your bills and you're saving money in the bank and you want to continue progressing on the financial end, or you want to get yourself more time, always know what your hourly rate is. And then anything below your hourly rate, if you can have somebody do it, you then pay someone to do it to free up your time, because you could just work another hour and make that hour. So my cousin, I'm going to call him out, even though he has no ability to defend himself. He said to me, like, sort of had this mantra of like, never let another man mow your lawn. And I was like, no, that's just straight male ego. And because if I can make $100 an hour and I can get someone to mow my lawn for $20 an hour, I'm going to do that because they mow the lawn. I now net $80 an hour. So like, I just generally think that if you can, as I progressed in my financials, I used to groom my own dogs, you know, and now I pay to have someone groom my dogs, and then someone mows my lawn and things like that, that like it naturally happens as you get more financially successful, that you want to be freeing up your time to continue to do things that are more and more valuable. So that's why I think that it's important to do that is as you increase, but not everyone can do this. And I want to acknowledge that.
But you made a really good example too of like, you can even do like $20. Most people I think can afford $20 to have someone mow their lawn. And if that's an hour that you get back to work on your sport or work on a side hustle that's going to, you know, be super lucrative for you, I mean, that's valuable. I mean, the example that you put in here was hiring a trainer, right? Where you were planning all your own, and actually I did the same thing this year too. So I was planning all of my own workouts, taking the time to plan them, you know, research workouts to do, and then find what muscle groups to work on, and then researching if I want to get to X level, you know, I need to improve these things. And it just saved me so much time to just pay a trainer to schedule all this stuff for me. I have all my workouts planned. I know that I'm on a system that's going to get me to where I need to be. It's just saved me so much time and hassle, and it's allowed me to work on other things on the side by not having to do that thing.
Yeah. It's like, how can you process out the things that are less vital to you being able to accomplish those goals? Like in terms of, if you can get the same output for less money, you should, because your time is your money, right? Like every day, every hour you spend is your money. And if you could work more hours and make more money, which even though most people are on salary, if they approach their employer and were like, can I work 45 hours and try to like increase my salary as a result or get some overtime or whatever, depending on your value to the company, that might be an option, right? Or you can have a side hustle or whatever. But yeah, I just think that like the biggest thing is just being able to consider the impact of what it might be if you didn't have to do all that work.
And last thing on this too, it's not always financial too, right? Like if you have a goal of building your relationship or connecting with your kids better, if you're able to free up a few more hours a week to spend more time with your kids or your significant other and build there, that's like almost, you can't even put a price on what those hours are worth, you know? So, you know, again, it depends on what your goals are in life, but if that's something that you need to free up to do, it might be worth paying somebody to free up those hours.
So moving on to the fourth example, it would be stacking goals. Take it away, Frank.
Yeah, so stacking goals is kind of another efficiency gain. And when you're trying to balance goals in multiple areas of life, really what we want to do is be more efficient in getting to these goals. So if we can stack multiple goals that achieve two different things at the same time, that's what we're trying to do to be more efficient. So for example, Roger, big book reader. We could say, hey, Roger, if you want to sleep better, you can read a book before bed. That'll improve your sleep in your personal life. You can also read a book about how to be good at pickleball because you stink at that too. And then now you're achieving goals in two areas of life at the same time. So that's an example of stacking goals.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, when you first brought this up, like, oh, I want to talk about stacking goals, I was like, what do you really mean? But then as we were talking through it, I was like, oh, like if you improve your sleep, for example, it literally impacts every aspect of your life, right? Like my athletics, my mental clarity, my personal relationships, I feel better. If you improve your diet, same thing. So you could have certain goals that overlap between your overarching visions or pillars, as we've talked about, that where you can kind of work on both things at once.
Yeah, another really good example is I identified in my personal life that I was feeling a little bit, I guess, like scatterbrained, not in the present moment. So when I get through these phases, I refresh my meditation and meditate 2-3 times a week. All it takes is 10 minutes. But by doing this, I improve my personal life. I improve my mindfulness in the moment. That also has cascading effects on my sport. I'm able to be more present during my sport. If I'm on a client call, I'm more present with the client. I'm able to react quicker to questions they ask. So a goal like this will have cascading effects across all these areas that I'm trying to excel at.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great pro tip. I'll move into the fifth one, which is scheduling. I'm a big scheduling guy, so I'll take this
King.
One. Yeah, I am so big on scheduling. It's probably like not good how scheduled I am, but I have a lot of different things that I have done with scheduling to try and accomplish goals. Like the first thing is with business, I don't take any meetings on Mondays and Fridays. And it's like really important that I start my week off being able to get stuff done and end my week being able to get stuff done so I can detach during the weekends, have more balance or do other things that I enjoy and just get stuff done at work in general. Sometimes if you just find that you have meetings all over the week, and you're not scheduled or efficient, that you just, it's hard to like get in the present or like the mindset of going into a meeting and mentally preparing for it. Then you have that meeting and then you're off that meeting. You can't just jump right into doing something. You like have to then decompress and you have to think about like maybe a recap you got to send out about the meeting and everything like that. So I try to stack my meetings together on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday afternoons. And then I like something like that has been huge for me. And sleep scheduling, getting up at the same time every day. For me, when I'm like, it doesn't matter whether I'm getting up early or late, but if I go to bed at the same time and I get up at the same time every day, I feel way better than if I am all over the place. So it's just, I think, in every aspect of life.
I think there's so much wasted time too. And when you go through a day and you don't have schedules blocked out and it's like, all right, so I had a great efficient 2 hours. Now I need to plan my next 2 hours and you might lose 15 minutes figuring out what you're going to do for the next 3 hours, like the goals you have to get done or the tasks or whatever, right? And then you get that done. Now for your next block, you take another 15 minutes. If this happens 3 or 4 times a day, that's an extra hour you just lost in being uncertain about what your next move is, uncertain of the tasks that you have to do next. So it's these like little pieces of time that we don't realize we're losing through through a lack of scheduling, that if you have all that stuff laid out coming into the day, it just creates more efficiency.
Yeah, and I find that like if I'm not scheduled or I have a mountain of work on my plate and I can't what I call wrap my head around it, if I can't wrap my head around my workload or what I have to do in general, I'm just like, it's when I'm most stressed.
Yeah,
totally. If I know the workload, even if it's a lot, so I use a whiteboard and I just take everything and I
Can we see it?
list
Bring
it
it
out
out.
on the white. Yeah, I'll bring it over.
Roger gets OD with his whiteboards. It's pretty sick.
So, well, you can't see it if you're listening on audio, but I have like my work stuff and then personal stuff that I got to get done. And I like bucket it by client. And then I star the ones that are like high priority that I got to get done. And so I consistently have like this whiteboard that I use to just like have all of my like outstanding or current tasks that I'm working on the whiteboard and just like being able to see it, wrap my head around it, know what's there. It just helps me like relax and understand like I can digest it. And then what I'll typically do is try to chop off a bunch of the small stuff and then get to the big stuff. But yeah,
I do have
find
one
that
follow-up for you as a big scheduler.
Yeah.
Do you, I'm sure you plan your schedule on Sunday, like for the week ahead. Do you prefer to do in the early morning, schedule your day out, or do you do the night before, schedule your next day so it's all laid out?
From a work perspective, for the most part, I always have my workload on the whiteboard and I just star the things that I'm going to work on the next day, because like redoing a schedule every day is just a lot of work. So I try to hold to a consistent schedule for like eternity. Like I get up in the morning and then I do my pickleball training, or I see the kids off to school. Then I do pickleball training and then I do a workout. Then I eat my breakfast and a protein shake. And then I start my work day, do my work morning. And then I do calls if it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then wrap up the day, go downstairs, have dinner with the family, whatever. It's like I have the same every Tuesday night. I sort of like, that's my night off, and Thursday night's my wife's night off. So that we each have like some of our own time to do whatever we want. So like I follow a consistent like schedule every week. And then within that, I just star the things that I'm trying to focus on the next day. Because sometimes I just can't get to all of them, or I get more done than I thought. And but I try not to set myself up and say like, you're going to do this exact task tomorrow. And like, you got to complete these 3 things. Cause like days just change, stuff changes.
Cool.
I'm going to move this away. You could start finding
I'll start on finding mentors. So that's our last pro tip as you try to balance major goals in life, and it's finding a mentor. So when you're tackling aggressive goals, you're gonna hit roadblocks, and the only way to overcome a lot of roadblocks is through experience. Now you can choose to learn that through your own experience and make mistakes, fail, learn from that, and then be better. Or you can expedite that process with a mentor. And by bringing a mentor into your life, you're going to expedite that learning process exponentially. They've already done this stuff. They know what it takes. And they can tell you the problems that you're going to hit before you hit them and how to beat them before you even come across them. So, in the end, when you're tackling an aggressive goal, experience is, I think, the number one thing that is going to help you tackle those. If you find a mentor in your life, hire a mentor. For example, a few years ago, I hired a mindset coach because, I was struggling to balance crucial goals or huge goals in a couple areas, and I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure out how to excel at this and excel at this and excel at something else too. So I hired a mindset coach. He taught me systems on how to achieve all these great goals and systems on how to just be more efficient in my days. And now my growth is like exponentially skyrocketed since that point. So again, it kind of goes back to the investment you talked about earlier, the upgrading your circle to save time. But even if you just have a mentor that you talk with and ask questions to and learn from, that's going to give you valuable skills that help you to be more efficient in your days.
Yeah, and I think I was just talking to a client about this actually today, where they were like, "Oh, we want to find like a fractional COO for their company." And one thing that I think is important too is that you want to try to model off after the best or the people you aspire to the most. But when it comes to businesses, you want someone that can also relate to you, or even athletics, that sometimes like the best of the best might not be able to relate to you. Like the best example I can think of is like, let's just say you're a freak athlete. You're like 6'8", you have an insane cannon for an arm, and you're like a football quarterback, right? And you can run like a super fast 40 time. Well, like Tom Brady might not be the best football coach for you, even though like he's the best football quarterback of all time. Like he doesn't know a lot about running and like how to leverage that as much as he does just pinpoint accuracy. You could still learn certain elements of the game from him, but your game is just not going to be the same. And so what I was recommending to the client today was I was saying, you should find a COO that has probably 3 or 4 steps ahead of you. So if you're a $10 million brand, you should find somebody that has run a $30 or $40 million brand. You don't want someone that's running a $500 million brand, because the problems you're overcoming at 500 million are not anywhere near or even relatable to the problems that you're going to deal with from getting from 10 to 40 million. And so I think it's important to understand that mentors can change over time too. Like the people that I was using as mentors, or that I had hired too throughout my journey of entrepreneurship, just changed. I probably had like 8 or 10 of them, because as I reached new levels of scale, you can sort of feel like maybe when you're tapping out of their knowledge, like, okay, you're just starting to hear the same things. You can sort of get the gist of it, and then it's okay to just move on to another mentor or continue to surround yourself with smart people. And that diversity of knowledge is important. So basically all I'm saying in a nutshell is, it's okay to have mentors for short periods of time.
Yeah, I like that. And speaking of elite athletes and not elite athletes, I measured my wingspan a couple days ago and found out I'm 6'5" and I have a 6'3" wingspan. So yeah, I wish.
Wow, so my wingspan's 4 inches longer than yours, and I'm only 6'1.5".
It must be nice.
And I have a 6'7" wingspan. This is why you shouldn't be blocking.
Yeah, that's right. And this is why it's all mental athletics and it has nothing to do with your physicality whatsoever.
All right.
All right.
Hit us
So
with
that's it. That's our 6 strategies. We had self-awareness, accountability partners, paying someone to upgrade your circle in order to save time, stacking goals, scheduling, and then finding mentors. So, we wanted to bring homework. Sorry, guys. We always try to bring homework for you. But the good homework for today can be, do you have a bottleneck in your life that's helping you not achieve balance? So in what area, if you have these goals you're trying to balance in life, which one is kind of holding you back? Which one are you not seeing the results that you want to? Are you not being as efficient as you want to within that goal? And are there one of these 6 strategies that you can deploy in order to get more efficient in your days and get more efficient with achieving these goals?
Yeah, I think it's important to just understand your biggest bottlenecks. Like the bottleneck for me in pickleball, for example, was that I just couldn't get enough reps in or like coordinate a crew to like get all these reps in. So I just bought a lobster machine. Now, again, that's not as easy as some other people might not just be able to buy something like that.
That's
so
all
like
of Roger's tips. Just be a millionaire and buy stuff.
But you can like practice against a wall, go to your local YMCA, like there's ways that you can get reps that aren't just needing to assemble a full crew of playing games. And so I think my bottleneck was just that, like, I wasn't hitting enough pickleballs, period. I just need to get I need to be holding a paddle and hitting more pickleballs every week. How can I get that from 500 to 2,000 or plus a week of just like hitting a pickleball? And for me, like, it was like a really, really good investment for the lobster machine, which I'm using the heck out of it. Every morning I do 400 or 500 balls, and it's like so helpful. So how can you identify what your true bottlenecks are and just focus your effort on clearing those, just as if it were a business and a process?
And for everyone listening, Roger just referenced a book as a great idea for how to improve his pickleball game. So there you go. Books do provide value.
I didn't reference a book, did I?
Yeah, that's what The Goal was about, man, by Eli Goldratt. Bottlenecks and constraints, baby. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I was talking about operations and business, Give me
All right,
your
what do you think? Jump
motivational
into
quote
our
today.
Yeah, the motivational quote, and it has to do with balance. It's by Jana Kingsford. Balance is not something you find. It's something you create.
So good.
Woo-woo.
It is created, just like happiness, man, for the most part. This with some asterisks and caveats. Balance is created.
It's funny, that
way
is
more control than you think.
It is like the narrative too. Like, you got to find balance. You got to find happiness. No, you got to create that shit. Oops, sorry. You got to create that shit.
Yeah, dude, it's. I mean, that's what we're trying to teach. Is like, this is what, episode 6?
6, yeah.
Yeah, we've gone through 5 episodes, and the vast majority of it is like actionable things that you can actually do to improve your mindset. It just goes to show like just how much control you have. And like, we honestly have like another 100 episodes we could come up with of ideas and things, but like, it just comes down to the fact that like we all are way more capable than we think we are, or that we give ourselves credit for. And we consistently allow our minds to trick us into thinking we can't do something, or that it's too hard, or it's some excuse. I hit 40 years old. I just try not to get injured. I'm not trying to do this. I'm not trying to do that. It's like everyone's just like, yeah, I'm tired. You don't know what I've been going through. Whatever. And this is where like the just excuses come in, right? It's like sometimes finding balance is not just about being just lazy. It's about earning balance, and you earn balance through like really self-evaluating, and stop letting your mind just trick you. The mind just plays so many games with you, and that's what we're trying to teach people, how to take control of it.
Go off, baby. Garrett, break that out. That's a breakout clip right there.
I'm passionate about it, man.
Just Roger telling everybody, stop being a bleep, 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 bleep. Let's go. Just do it. Create it.
Yeah. Make the life you've dreamed of. Come on, let's go, baby.
There you go.
Play us out. I'm going to play
Episode
Fortnite.
6. Episode 6 in the books. Balance. Hope y'all enjoyed the episode. I hope that you learned one thing from it. Hopefully you can implement that in your life. Stay tuned for episode 7 coming next Thursday. And we are out from the Net Gains podcast. Yo!